Behind every thriving career, meaningful relationship, and story of lasting transformation lies something subtle yet powerful: habits. Not the dramatic turning points or bold leaps, but the small, repeated choices we make each day. Habits are the invisible framework that shapes our lives. They guide how we think, act, and grow quietly, influencing who we become. We tend to celebrate outcomes, the promotions, the milestones, the breakthroughs without always noticing the patterns that made them possible. The early mornings, the quiet persistence, the steady practice. It's not one act that changes a life, but the collection of ordinary actions repeated with purpose. While the world rewards intensity, real progress is built on consistency. This audiobook isn't about quick fixes or willpower-heavy strategies. It's not about perfection or rigid rules. It's about creating habits that reflect the person you want to be. Habits that last. Habits that support you when motivation fades. Whether you want to improve your health, sharpen your focus, or live more intentionally, it starts with small, consistent steps. You don't need to be extraordinary. You need a system, a plan that helps you make better choices more easily and consistently. Over time, these small decisions shape not just your results, but your identity. A strong habit becomes part of who you are. It doesn't need convincing. It just happens. The most successful people aren't relying on heroic effort every day. They've built systems, routines that make good behavior easier and more automatic. And these systems aren't reserved for high performers. You can design them too based on your goals, values, and lifestyle. This audiobook is your guide. You'll learn how habits are formed, how they stick, and how to get back on track when they falter. This isn't about big overnight changes. It's about steady progress. You'll explore how to build better systems, adapt your environment, and create habits that align with the person you're becoming. Because success isn't built on what you do once, it's built on what you do consistently. And it all begins with the habits you create starting today. Chapter 1. Why habits matter more than goals. It's easy to admire someone who has achieved success, a brilliant entrepreneur, a dedicated athlete, a gifted artist, and assume they got there by setting bold, ambitious goals and pursuing them with unwavering determination. But if you pause and look more closely, you'll find something surprising. It wasn't the goal that made the difference. It was the system they followed. It was the habits they practiced daily, long after the excitement of the goal had faded. Habits are the infrastructure of success. They are the bridge between vision and reality. A goal gives you a target, a direction, but it does not tell you how to get there. A habit, on the other hand, is the step-by-step process that moves you forward, inch by inch, even on days when you're tired, distracted, or discouraged. Goals are great for setting an intention, but only habits can build the life that intention dreams of. Think of a goal like deciding to travel to a distant city. You might feel a surge of inspiration as you look at the photos or imagine the experience, but unless you make travel plans, pack your bags, and book your ticket, nothing changes. Habits are the roadmap and the vehicle that get you there. They're the daily walk to the train station, the patience to sit through the long journey, and the consistent steps that eventually bring you to your destination. The journey itself, even before the arrival, begins to reshape your understanding of what it means to commit. It's in the journey that you become the kind of person who can reach the destination. A goal is about results. I want to run a marathon. But a habit is about the process. I run every morning, even if it's just for 10 minutes, and that difference is enormous. The goal might spark your first run, but only the habit will carry you through the months of effort it takes to cross the finish line. It's easy to run when the sun is shining, your energy is high, and your playlist is perfect. But it's the habit that gets you out of bed on rainy mornings, when your motivation is low and excuses seem louder than your intention. Let's imagine two people decide to learn the guitar. The first person sets a lofty goal, to play their favorite song perfectly in 1 month. Inspired, they practice intensely for a few days, but when life gets busy, they lose momentum. The second person takes a different approach. They commit to practicing for just 5 minutes a day. No pressure, no deadline, just consistency. After 1 month, who has made more progress? Almost always, it's the second person. Because when it comes to change, consistency beats intensity. The person who shows up regularly, even for a little, begins to build something permanent, something rooted. The habit becomes part of their rhythm. That's the paradox of progress. We think big change requires big effort, but often it just requires small effort, repeated again and again. Habits remove the friction of starting. They turn action into routine. They create forward motion without requiring a fresh decision every time. And once that motion is established, it becomes much harder to stop. It's like rolling a snowball down a hill. At first, you're shaping it, pushing it, coaxing it forward. But soon, momentum takes over. What was once difficult becomes natural. What was once a question, should I do this today, becomes a given. We often hear stories of success that focus on the climax, the championship win, the bestseller launch, the awards ceremony. But the real story happens behind the scenes. It happens in the quiet mornings when no one is watching. It happens in the thousands of small decisions to keep going, to show up, to practice, to try again. That is the power of habits. They move us steadily in the direction we want to go, even when we're not thinking about it. They make the extraordinary feel ordinary, because success becomes woven into the fabric of our everyday life. Habits also help us deal with one of the biggest obstacles to achievement, the unpredictability of motivation. Motivation is fleeting. Some days you feel on fire, other days you feel empty. You can't always control how you feel, but you can control what you do. When a habit is strong enough, you don't need to feel inspired. You just follow the routine. You show up because that's who you are now. You don't have to convince yourself. You just act. And the beautiful part is that action often creates the very motivation we were waiting for. Doing the thing leads to wanting to do the thing. There's a saying, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. That's worth repeating. Your life doesn't improve because you set better goals. It improves because you build better habits, habits that align with the person you want to be, and that make success a natural byproduct of your lifestyle. Think about a musician who plays scales daily, not because it's thrilling, but because it forms the foundation for freedom and creativity later. Habits aren't glamorous, but they are powerful. They are the groundwork for excellence. And perhaps most importantly, habits change who you believe you are. When you practice something consistently, even in a small way, you begin to see yourself differently. You go from someone who wants to be a writer to someone who is a writer because you write every day. You go from someone who hopes to be healthy to someone who is healthy because you take care of your body. Your identity is shaped not by grand declarations, but by the evidence you accumulate through action. Each time you act in alignment with the person you want to become, you reinforce that identity. Your self-image shifts. And when your identity changes, your habits become more than tasks. They become expressions of who you are. That's why habits matter more than goals. Goals can give you clarity. They can ignite ambition. But habits are what shape you. They determine your trajectory. And over time, they determine your destiny. So don't obsess over what you want to achieve someday. Focus on what you're doing today. Build a system that supports your values. Show up for it, day after day, because in the end, success is not something you chase, it's something you grow into, one habit at a time, one day at a time, one choice at a time. And eventually, the person you imagined becomes the person you are. Chapter 2. How habits are formed. Understanding how habits work is the first step to changing them. Too often, people attempt to change their lives through sheer willpower alone, without ever examining the mechanisms that drive their behaviors. But habits, at their core, are not random. They are built through a predictable and repeatable loop. This loop consists of three essential parts: cue, routine, and reward. Once you understand this cycle, you hold the key to reshaping your behavior and, eventually, your identity. Let's begin with the cue. A cue is any trigger that prompts your brain to initiate a behavior. It can be external, like seeing your phone light up with a notification, or internal, like feeling bored, anxious, or tired. Cues are often rooted in time of day, location, emotional state, or even the actions of people around you. Your brain is constantly scanning for cues, looking for signals that indicate which behavior should follow. The routine is the behavior itself. It's the action that follows the cue. This can be something as simple as brushing your teeth or grabbing a coffee, or more complex like preparing a report or going for a run. The routine is the part of the habit that you actually do, the visible action that others can observe. It's also where most people focus their attention when trying to change habits, thinking that if they just do something different, the habit will shift. But the routine cannot be sustained without addressing what comes before and after. Then comes the reward. The reward is what your brain gets out of the behavior. It could be a physical sensation, an emotional release, or even a fleeting sense of accomplishment. Checking your phone delivers the reward of entertainment or connection. Eating dessert offers comfort or pleasure. Going for a run might give you a runner's high or a sense of progress. The reward teaches your brain that the behavior is worth remembering and repeating. This loop: cue, routine, reward forms the foundation of every habit, good or bad. The more you repeat this loop, the more automatic it becomes. Your brain begins to anticipate the reward as soon as it recognizes the cue, and it prompts the behavior before you even think about it. That's why habits feel so natural over time. They're processed by parts of the brain designed to conserve energy, requiring little to no conscious effort. Let's take a simple example. Imagine waking up and seeing your phone on the nightstand. That's the cue. You pick it up and start scrolling through social media. That's the routine. You feel amused, informed, or distracted. That's the reward. The more often you repeat this loop, the more entrenched the habit becomes. Eventually, your hand reaches for the phone before you even fully wake up. Now consider how that same loop can be redirected to build a more intentional habit. What if, instead of reaching for your phone, you placed a journal next to your bed? Now the cue is still the same, waking up, but the routine changes. You write one sentence about what you're grateful for. The reward: a calm, focused mind to start your day. Over time, that becomes just as automatic, but far more beneficial. Changing a habit doesn't mean fighting against your nature. It means redesigning the loop. First, identify the cue. What's triggering the behavior? Is it time of day, a location, an emotional state? Once you know the cue, you can consciously insert a new routine. At first, this takes effort. It may feel awkward, but with repetition, the new behavior becomes natural. The key is to pair it with a meaningful reward, something your brain values enough to keep the loop alive. Rewards don't need to be extravagant. In fact, small rewards work best because they're sustainable. The satisfaction of checking a box, a brief moment of reflection, or the internal feeling of progress can all reinforce the habit. What matters is that the reward is consistent and tied directly to the behavior. Your brain learns, when I do this, I feel good. There's also value in stacking habits, linking new behaviors to existing routines. This is often called habit chaining or anchoring. If you already brush your teeth every morning, add a short meditation session immediately afterward. If you make coffee every afternoon, use that moment as a cue to read one page of a book. By piggybacking on an established habit, you harness the existing structure in your brain and reduce the friction of starting something new. Environment plays a role, too. Make the cues for your desired habits obvious and visible. Want to eat more fruit? Put it in a bowl where you can see it. Want to work out? Lay out your clothes the night before. Conversely, hide cues for habits you want to avoid. Out of sight, out of mind is not just a cliché, it's neuroscience. And here's the truth many overlook. Habit formation is not a matter of willpower, it's a matter of design. It's about creating a system that makes the desired behavior easy, attractive, and rewarding. You don't need to feel motivated every day if your environment and routines support the action by default. Repetition is what turns an action into a habit, but consistency is what gives it staying power. Skipping one day doesn't destroy a habit, but stringing together several days without repetition weakens the loop. That's why it's often said, never miss twice. Life will interfere. That's normal. The key is getting back on track quickly. Changing your habits may feel slow at first. You may not see results right away. But remember this, every time you complete the loop with intention, you are reshaping your brain. Neural pathways are being carved out. Identity is being strengthened. Momentum is being built. So, if you want to build better habits, start by becoming a better observer. Watch your actions, understand your triggers, experiment with new routines, reward yourself in meaningful ways, and above all, stay patient. Habits take time to form, but once they do, they carry you effortlessly toward the person you want to become. And perhaps most importantly, recognize that habit mastery is not a finish line, it's a lifestyle. Even once a behavior becomes automatic, it still benefits from mindful attention and refinement. Life changes, seasons shift, and so must your systems. The habit that serves you today might need to evolve tomorrow. Stay curious. Reassess regularly. Let your habits grow with you. Mastering habits is a long game, but it's a game you can win. You don't need to rush. You just need to keep choosing, keep adjusting, and keep showing up. One loop at a time, one day at a time. That's how you build not just better habits, but a better version of yourself. Chapter 3. Starting small for big change. Most people don't fail to build habits because they lack desire or discipline. They fail because they bite off more than they can chew. They overestimate how much they can do on day one and underestimate how powerful consistency is over time. Change is hard, not because you're weak, but because the human brain resists unfamiliar routines. It seeks comfort, predictability, and ease. That's why sustainable change always starts small. When we think of transformation, we often think big. We want to read a book a week, go to the gym for an hour every day, cook all our meals from scratch, or meditate for 30 minutes each morning. And while there's nothing wrong with ambition, starting too big can be a trap. It sets you up for frustration, burnout, and self-doubt when you inevitably fall short. Here's the alternative. Start small, radically small. If you want to build a reading habit, don't promise yourself a book a week. Start with reading 1 page a day. If you want to build a fitness habit, don't commit to a 1-hour workout. Begin with 5 minutes of stretching. Want to write daily? Start with 1 sentence. These micro-habits may seem too small to matter, but they do matter because they get you moving. They get you started. And that's the most difficult part of any habit, overcoming inertia. You don't need to feel inspired to write 1 sentence. You don't need superhuman willpower to stretch for 5 minutes. And yet, in doing so, you start to lay the neural groundwork for a new behavior. You begin casting votes for a new identity. You shift from someone who wants to write to someone who writes. That identity shift, however small, is a powerful engine for future change. This isn't about lowering the bar or settling for less. It's about creating a foothold. Imagine trying to climb a steep cliff with no ledges. Every step would feel impossible. Now imagine having small, stable footholds every few inches. That's what micro-habits offer. Stability, progress, and a path forward. Once you find your footing, momentum builds. What felt hard at first begins to feel natural. Momentum is built not from giant leaps, but from tiny nudges in the right direction, repeated consistently. There's also a psychological advantage to starting small. When you set a massive goal and fail to meet it, you reinforce a story that says, "I'm not disciplined enough." But when you set a small goal and achieve it consistently, you begin telling yourself a new story. "I keep my promises." That self-trust is the real foundation of lasting change. You begin to prove to yourself that you are someone who follows through. You become more confident, not because you achieved a massive breakthrough, but because you became consistent. Small habits are easier to maintain, and they are less intimidating to begin. But here's the surprising part. They often grow on their own. When you start with 5 minutes of exercise, you might find yourself doing 10. When you commit to one sentence, you might write a paragraph. The key is that you showed up, and showing up reinforces your identity. Let's take another example. Say you want to develop a morning routine. Instead of trying to overhaul your entire morning in one go, adding yoga, journaling, reading, and green smoothies, all at once try adding one tiny action. Set a glass of water beside your bed and drink it when you wake up. That's it. It's simple, it's doable, and it begins to train your brain. Mornings are a time for intention. From there, you can build. Maybe journaling comes next. Maybe a few minutes of movement. Each habit layers onto the previous one, like bricks in a foundation. The principle behind starting small isn't just practical, it's biological. Your brain builds habits through a process called myelination. The more you perform an action, the more insulated the neural pathways become. This makes the behavior faster, smoother, and eventually automatic. But here's the catch. Repetition is what matters most, not volume. Writing one sentence every day wires your brain for writing far more effectively than writing 10 pages once a month. Consistency creates structure. Volume can come later. Many people delay starting because they feel their effort won't be enough. But that thinking overlooks the compound effect. Small efforts, repeated consistently, compound over time into remarkable results. It's like planting a seed. You don't see growth overnight, but day by day, beneath the surface, roots are spreading. Eventually, that seed becomes a tree, but only if it's watered consistently, even if only a little each day. One powerful strategy for starting small is called the 2-minute rule. If a habit takes less than 2 minutes to do, do it. Read one sentence. Put on your running shoes. Write one line in your journal. These actions are so easy that it's hard to find a reason not to do them. And once you begin, you'll often keep going. But even if you don't, you've succeeded because the habit isn't about intensity. It's about identity. You may even find joy in the simplicity. There's a quiet confidence that comes from doing what you said you would, no matter how small. That feeling of showing up, of aligning your actions with your values, is deeply satisfying. It builds resilience. It builds pride. It's not about chasing perfection, but about nurturing presence. And here's the truth. A small habit done daily is more valuable than a huge effort done inconsistently. Consistency turns actions into patterns. Patterns turn into routines, and routines shape your life. Eventually, your identity shifts. You're no longer trying to act like a healthy person, you are one. You're not forcing yourself to write, you are a writer. The change becomes internal. So, if you're struggling to start, don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't try to overhaul everything at once. Start small. Start simple. And trust the process. Because small hinges swing big doors. 1 minute today is better than an hour someday. And over time, those tiny steps will carry you farther than you ever imagined. In the end, what feels like an insignificant action today may become the very foundation of the future you. Chapter 4. Designing your environment for success. We like to believe that our decisions are shaped primarily by willpower, that we choose our behaviors consciously, and that change is just a matter of trying harder. But if we look closely, we'll see that our choices are often a product of our environment. In fact, your surroundings frequently influence your behavior far more than you realize. If your phone is the first thing you see in the morning, chances are it's also the first thing you use. If cookies are placed on the kitchen counter, you're more likely to eat them than if they're hidden on a high shelf. Our environment quietly steers us, moment by moment, shaping our actions before we've even had time to think. That's why the most effective way to build better habits isn't just to rely on self-control. It's to design an environment where your desired behaviors are easier to follow and your undesired ones are harder to fall into. This is the art of environmental design, and it can make the difference between struggle and success. Imagine trying to eat healthier while keeping your pantry stocked with chips and sweets. Every time you walk into the kitchen, you're faced with temptation. Even if your intention is strong, you still have to fight against your environment. Now imagine a kitchen where fresh fruit is visible, healthy snacks are accessible, and junk food is out of sight or not present at all. Suddenly, the better choice becomes the easier one. No willpower needed, just proximity and visibility. To build better habits, your environment should offer clarity and ease. Make the good habits obvious. If you want to exercise in the morning, lay out your workout clothes the night before. Want to drink more water? Keep a water bottle within arm's reach at all times. Want to read more? Place books in places where you naturally spend time, by your bed, on your desk, even next to the couch. The point is to remove the need for mental effort in initiating the behavior. When the cue is visible and the action is frictionless, you're far more likely to follow through. And equally important, make the bad habits less convenient. If social media is a distraction, log out of the apps or remove them from your home screen. If you're trying to cut down on snacking, don't keep tempting food in plain sight. If television is eating up your evenings, try unplugging it or storing the remote in another room. You don't need to be constantly strong if you're not constantly triggered. Eliminate friction for good habits and add friction for the ones you want to leave behind. Design your space with intention, not default. Your surroundings should cue the behavior you want to adopt. In many cases, changing what you see changes what you do. Think of your environment as a silent coach. It either nudges you forward or holds you back. You don't have to fight every urge if you simply don't face the temptation as often. You don't need to decide to do the right thing when the right thing is already set up and ready. That's the power of default design, removing the need for willpower by making the right choice the path of least resistance. There's also value in creating zones of intention in your physical space. If your bedroom is only for sleep and winding down, your brain will associate it with rest. If your desk is clean and free from distractions, it becomes a place for focus. If your kitchen is organized around healthy meals, cooking becomes a joy, not a chore. Each space you spend time in should be designed to support the behavior you want to see in that space. The clearer the boundary between contexts, the easier it is for your brain to switch gears. Think of the habits you're trying to build and ask, what in my environment supports this? What in my environment makes it harder? Often, you don't need more motivation, you need fewer obstacles. And even tiny adjustments can make a huge difference. Light a candle when you study. Use a specific mug for morning journaling. Keep running shoes by the door. These are physical anchors that reinforce behavioral intention. Small changes can yield big results. Want to play guitar more often? Leave it on a stand in your living room, not in a case in your closet. Want to journal every night? Keep your notebook on your pillow. Want to write more? Open your writing app before you go to bed, so it's the first thing you see when you open your laptop. The less effort it takes to start a habit, the more likely you are to follow through. And over time, these cues become linked to the behavior. The presence of the guitar prompts you to play. The sight of the notebook reminds you to write. The environment begins to do the remembering for you, and this works both ways. If you repeatedly perform a behavior in a certain environment, your brain begins to associate the space with that behavior. Walk into a kitchen where you always snack, and you'll feel the urge to snack. Sit down at a desk where you always scroll through social media, and your attention will drift. But you can break these links by changing the environment or the context in which the behavior occurs. Even a small shift, a different chair, a new layout, a different time of day can reset your mental associations. Designing your environment doesn't mean turning your life upside down. It means making small, thoughtful adjustments that remove resistance. You don't need to move to a new house or buy new furniture. Sometimes, all it takes is a little rearranging, a little intentionality. Put the tools for your new habits where you can see them. Hide the triggers for your old ones. Treat your space as a collaborator, not a container. This approach shifts the burden from your willpower to your surroundings, and that's a good thing. Willpower is like a battery, it drains. But a smartly designed environment works for you around the clock. It becomes your ally in the habit-building process, quietly shaping your actions, reinforcing your intentions, and guiding you toward the person you want to become. Ultimately, the environments you create physically, digitally, and even socially are not just backdrops to your life. They are powerful influences that can either support your growth or sabotage your progress. Choose them wisely. Adjust them deliberately, because over time, the environment you build shapes the person you become. And when you take control of your environment, you take control of your future. Chapter 5. Overcoming setbacks and staying consistent. No habit journey is perfect. No matter how motivated you are, no matter how well you design your systems, there will be days when things don't go according to plan. Life is unpredictable. You'll miss a workout. You'll forget to journal. You'll slip back into an old routine. That's not failure. That's reality. And how you respond to that reality determines whether your habits survive or wither. We often place too much emphasis on being perfect and not enough on being persistent. Missing one day isn't what breaks a habit, it's what you do after the miss that matters most. If you skip one day, skip one workout, skip one task, the real danger lies in the story you start telling yourself afterward. I messed up. I'm falling behind. I can't do this. That narrative, not the slip itself, is what causes long-term derailment. Think of your habit streak like brushing your teeth. If you forget one night, you don't throw away your toothbrush or assume all your past efforts were wasted. You simply brush the next morning. The same goes for any habit. The faster you return to the routine, the stronger the habit becomes. Every comeback strengthens your identity. You're not someone who gives up, you're someone who finds their way back. One of the most powerful mindsets you can develop is to treat setbacks as part of the process. Don't ask, how do I never fall off track? Instead, ask, how quickly and gently can I return? Because ultimately, the people who succeed at building lasting habits aren't the ones who are perfect, they're the ones who are resilient. They don't let a bad day become a bad week, or a missed task become a broken system. Instead, they have a plan for returning to baseline, a routine that welcomes them back without shame. Self-compassion plays a huge role here. Many people believe that if they go easy on themselves, they'll become lazy or complacent. But the opposite is often true. Beating yourself up doesn't lead to discipline, it leads to shame. And shame is a terrible motivator. When you respond to a mistake with judgment, you associate effort with punishment. But when you respond with curiosity, asking what caused the break and how you can adjust, you create a mindset of growth. Let's say you plan to work out in the morning but hit snooze instead. Rather than labeling yourself as lazy, take a moment to reflect. Were you getting enough sleep? Was your plan too rigid? Could you fit in a walk later in the day? Setbacks are often signals. They're your system asking to be tweaked, not torn down. Use them as feedback, not failure. Sometimes, a missed habit is a chance to spot hidden friction or a flaw in your routine that, once adjusted, will make the habit stronger going forward. Consistency over time is far more powerful than short bursts of intensity. A single high-effort week does little if it's followed by 3 weeks of burnout. But a low-effort habit done daily, that builds momentum. That builds identity. That rewires your brain for sustainability. You don't need to be extreme. You need to be consistent. This is where the concept of never miss twice becomes incredibly helpful. Everyone misses once, but letting that miss become the beginning of a downward spiral is preventable. One skipped journal entry? Fine. Skip 2, and you risk losing the rhythm. A helpful approach is to always have a backup version of your habit. If you don't have time for a 30-minute run, take a 5-minute walk. If you can't write a full page, write 1 sentence. Shrink the habit, but protect the consistency. The idea is to keep the thread intact, to show your brain that this is still who you are, even on difficult days. It's also useful to zoom out and take the long view. Habits aren't built in a day. They're forged over time, shaped by the accumulation of repeated efforts. Look at your progress over months, not days. A single rough patch doesn't undo the structure you've built. It's just a moment. And you are not your worst day, you are what you consistently return to. Think of your habit history like a book. One bad chapter doesn't erase the whole story, it just adds complexity, and often depth. One helpful metaphor is that of steering a ship. When a ship goes slightly off course, the captain doesn't panic. They make a small correction and continue forward. You can do the same with your habits. When you veer off path, correct gently and keep going. There's no need for guilt, no need to restart from zero. Just course correct and move forward. Small corrections applied early and often keep you aligned with your broader vision. Also, surround yourself with supportive reminders of your progress. Celebrate streaks, even if they're small. Track your habits visibly so you have proof of your effort. And when you do slip, review your progress rather than erasing it. Reflect on what you've done right and where you can improve. Every habit builder faces setbacks. What separates those who succeed from those who don't isn't the absence of failure, it's the commitment to return. Sometimes, that return requires you to lower the bar temporarily. If you're exhausted, stressed, or overwhelmed, give yourself permission to do the minimum version of your habit. That might mean meditating for 1 minute instead of 10. Or walking around the block instead of going to the gym. These scaled-down habits keep the neural pathways active. They're your bridge between the off day and the strong day. In the end, what matters isn't whether you were flawless. What matters is that you kept showing up. Your ability to begin again and again, is what builds strength. That's how real consistency is born. Not through rigidity, but through resilience. Not through perfection, but through persistence. So when the inevitable setback arrives, and it will remember this, missing a step doesn't mean you've lost the path. It just means it's time to take the next step forward. Pick up the pen, tie your shoes, open the book, fill the glass. Restarting is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of ownership. And that is the mindset of someone who builds habits that last a lifetime. Even on the days you feel furthest from your goal, showing up in any capacity matters. That quiet act of recommitment reinforces something deeper. Your integrity. Integrity is not about being perfect, it's about being aligned. When your actions reflect your values, even imperfectly, you're on the right path. You're saying, I still care. I still believe in this change. I'm still trying. That attitude builds what researchers call identity capital. Every time you follow through, even just a little, you deposit into the version of yourself you're trying to become. Over time, those deposits add up to confidence, clarity, and internal strength. When you look back after weeks or months of effort, you won't remember every stumble. You'll remember the grit it took to keep going. So be proud of the imperfect path. Embrace the human messiness of the process. And trust that consistency doesn't mean never wavering. It means always returning, always realigning, always becoming. That is the work, and that is the way lasting change is built. Chapter 6. The role of identity in habit formation. One of the most powerful and overlooked drivers of lasting behavior change is identity. Too often, we focus on the outcomes we want: losing weight, writing a book, running a marathon, without considering the kind of person who naturally achieves those outcomes. But long-lasting habits aren't just about what you do, they're about who you believe you are. When you change your identity, your behaviors follow. Instead of focusing solely on external goals, begin by asking a deeper question: who do I want to become? Don't just set the goal to run a few times a week. See yourself as a runner. Don't just commit to writing in a journal. See yourself as a writer. This subtle shift changes everything, because once your actions are aligned with your identity, they no longer feel forced. They feel like expressions of who you are. Identity-based habits are resilient because they're not anchored to motivation or external rewards. They're anchored to the way you see yourself. When a behavior is part of your self-image, you'll defend it, protect it, and return to it even after setbacks. If you believe you're the kind of person who values health, skipping a workout feels out of character. If you identify as someone who is organized, leaving your workspace cluttered feels wrong. The stronger your identity, the more consistent your behavior becomes. Changing your identity doesn't happen overnight. It's not a decision, it's a process. And the process starts with small, repeated actions that serve as evidence. Every time you perform a habit, you're casting a vote for the type of person you want to be. Each workout is a vote for being an athlete. Each healthy meal is a vote for being someone who values their body. Each focused hour of work is a vote for being a professional. The more votes you cast, the more solid your identity becomes. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. You don't need to run 10 miles to be a runner. You need to run, even if it's just a block. The action doesn't have to be big, it just has to be aligned with the identity. It's the repetition, not the scale, that shapes who you are. Your brain starts to recognize a pattern, and soon the habit feels less like something you're trying to do and more like something you simply are. Over time, your sense of self becomes stronger and more integrated with the routines you maintain. One way to reinforce identity is to use intentional language. Instead of saying, "I have to go for a run," say, "I'm a runner, and this is what I do." Instead of saying, "I'm trying to write," say, "I'm a writer, and writers write." These subtle affirmations build alignment between who you want to be and what you're doing. And the more aligned your actions and identity become, the less resistance you'll feel. You'll begin to take pride in your habits, not just as accomplishments, but as reflections of your character. When faced with temptation or challenge, identity provides a compass. Ask yourself, what would a healthy person do in this moment? What would a focused student choose? What would a leader say? This question shifts your thinking from impulse to intentionality. It removes decision fatigue by giving you a model to follow your future self. Instead of struggling with every choice, you let your envisioned identity take the lead. This habit of alignment builds integrity. It makes your actions congruent with your aspirations. It's also important to understand that identities can evolve. You're not limited by who you've been. You can choose a new identity and begin living into it through daily action. Maybe you've never thought of yourself as disciplined, but each time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen that belief. Maybe you've always seen yourself as disorganized, but every small act of tidiness casts a new vote. Over time, those actions overwrite the old story. Identity is not static. It's a living narrative that you author with your habits. In fact, many people unknowingly carry outdated versions of themselves. We define ourselves by past experiences, failures, or labels we absorbed from others. I'm bad at math. I'm not athletic. I'm not creative. These identities become self-fulfilling prophecies, silently guiding our behavior. But the truth is, every action you take today can begin to chip away at those beliefs. With every repetition of a new behavior, you are giving yourself permission to be someone new. This is the essence of reinvention, not changing who you are entirely, but uncovering and reinforcing the best version of yourself through deliberate action. Of course, identity can work both ways. If you believe you're bad with money or not a morning person, you'll unconsciously behave in ways that reinforce that narrative. That's why awareness is key. Pay attention to the labels you give yourself. Are they serving you or limiting you? Are they true or are they just familiar? You have the power to rewrite the script, but the pen is in your habits. Each day presents a blank page and a new opportunity to choose who you are becoming. Building an identity around your habits isn't about pretending. It's about aligning your internal beliefs with external behaviors. When those two are in sync, habits stick. They become more than things you do, they become expressions of who you are. There's a deep satisfaction in living congruently when your values, actions, and self-perception are all in harmony. That harmony builds confidence, purpose, and a quiet sense of control over your life's direction. Remember that identity-based habits are slow to form, but powerful to sustain. Unlike habits built on fleeting motivation or willpower, these habits are anchored in meaning. They feel purposeful. They're easier to return to when life gets messy. And they often spread when you see yourself as someone who reads regularly. You might also begin to write more, think more clearly, and make more intentional decisions. Identity creates coherence, and coherence multiplies your effort. So don't just focus on what you want to achieve, focus on who you are becoming. Let every small act be a vote for that identity. Let every decision reinforce your values. And when in doubt, come back to the question, who is the person I want to be, and what would that person do right now? Because in the end, you become your habits, and your habits become you. Shape them with care, nurture them with patience, and you will shape yourself in the process. Chapter 7. Tracking Progress and Celebrating Wins. Tracking your progress is one of the most effective ways to stay connected to your habits. It offers a sense of structure and clarity, a visible record that reminds you of how far you've come. When you measure what you're doing, you gain perspective. You're not just guessing whether something is working. You're observing patterns. And that awareness, even in its simplest form, can be a powerful motivator that keeps your momentum alive when motivation dips. You don't need a complicated system to track your habits. A notebook, a wall calendar, or a basic habit tracker app can be more than enough. The point isn't perfection, it's visibility. When you can see your streaks, your check marks, your days of effort lined up in front of you, something changes. You start to feel invested. You begin to anticipate the joy of marking another day completed. That simple check becomes a quiet celebration, a moment of acknowledgement that you showed up again and kept your promise to yourself. Progress tracking also helps you detect problems early. If your consistency starts to slip, you'll see it before it turns into a complete breakdown. You'll notice the missing days and can reflect on why they occurred. Was the habit too ambitious? Did something in your environment change? Are you bored or distracted? Tracking invites honest reflection, not to judge yourself, but to adjust and improve. It gives you data to work with and the confidence that comes from self-awareness. Patterns that were once invisible start to surface, offering clarity on what supports or sabotages your consistency. But progress isn't just about keeping score. It's also about celebrating. Many people overlook this part, believing that only the big wins deserve recognition. But the truth is, small wins are the foundation of lasting change. When you finish a week of consistent habits, celebrate it. When you go a full month without skipping a single day, take a moment to reflect and reward yourself. These acknowledgements are not just feel-good moments. They fuel motivation. They remind your brain that effort matters, and that progress is happening, even if it's not immediately visible. Celebrating doesn't have to mean throwing a party or buying something expensive. It can be as simple as telling yourself, "I'm proud of what I did today." It can be taking a mindful pause to recognize your effort. It can be sharing your progress with a friend or writing a short journal entry about what you learned. The act of celebration strengthens the emotional bond between you and the habit. It turns discipline into something that feels good, not something you have to suffer through. When a habit feels rewarding, you're more likely to return to it. And that's the secret. Make the habit feel like a gift, not a punishment. When progress feels invisible, habits begin to fade. But when progress is acknowledged, habits grow roots. You feel that your time is leading somewhere, that your effort is compounding. It becomes easier to keep going, because you're not just chasing a distant goal, you're experiencing success along the way. Success begins to feel like a daily experience, not just a final outcome. You develop a sense of direction, confidence, and emotional satisfaction that makes the journey itself worthwhile. Celebration also helps solidify identity. When you acknowledge your consistency, you're reinforcing a new story about yourself. You're not just someone who's trying to change, you are someone who is changing. That shift is powerful. It makes the habit feel like part of who you are. It brings joy into the process. And joy, when paired with structure, creates a feedback loop that sustains effort without burning you out. And don't underestimate the power of milestones. Set small, meaningful markers for yourself. 10 days of meditation, 2 weeks of journaling, 30 days of movement. These milestones give you a sense of progress and structure. They create moments of reflection where you can look back, appreciate your growth, and prepare for the next phase. They break long journeys into smaller, winnable chapters, and that makes everything feel more manageable. When you string enough of these moments together, you build confidence step by step, layer by layer. For example, if your goal is to walk every morning, tracking that habit over 30 days will help you see your discipline develop. But celebrating each milestone, like the 10th walk or the first full week, will give you the psychological lift that keeps you going. It makes each effort feel valuable, each step like a win, and creates emotional momentum that's just as vital as physical consistency. Of course, there will be stretches where progress feels slow, where you feel like you're going through the motions. That's normal. Not every day will feel victorious. But that's exactly when tracking and celebrating become most important. They give shape to your journey. They remind you that persistence itself is a kind of success. And even when results take time to appear, effort itself can be a source of pride. Habits grow in silence, long before the results become obvious. Your job is to keep watering the soil. Success isn't just the big outcomes, the published book, the weight loss, the marathon finish. It's the tiny choices, repeated with care and intention. It's the decision to keep showing up, to do one more rep, to write one more sentence. These are the choices that shape your life. And by honoring them, you turn the process of change into something deeply rewarding. You no longer measure success by speed or scale, but by integrity and follow-through. So, track your habits. Celebrate your efforts. Notice your progress. Reflect often. Create rituals that reinforce your identity. Recognize that each small win is a building block for something greater. Because when you pay attention to the journey, you create fuel for the road ahead. And when you take the time to appreciate each step, you make the climb not only possible but meaningful. And that meaning is what gives your habits the strength to last a lifetime. You already have everything you need to build a better life. It doesn't require a dramatic reinvention or a perfect beginning. Real, lasting change begins with one intentional choice, one action repeated until it becomes a natural extension of who you are. One small habit, practiced daily, can reshape the trajectory of your life. Progress doesn't happen in sudden leaps. It's built through steady consistency. By showing up on the days when it's hard, when you don't feel like it, when no one is watching. Growth happens in those quiet, unremarkable moments, the ones that may feel ordinary in the moment, but ultimately prove to be transformative. You don't need grand gestures or sweeping overhauls to create a meaningful life. What you need are small, intentional behaviors repeated with care. Drinking water first thing in the morning, turning off notifications before bed, writing down one thing you're grateful for. These little acts are more than routines, they're affirmations of who you're becoming. They send a message: I show up, I take ownership, I invest in myself. Your future is not determined by the goals you write on a page, but by the systems you build around those goals. Your routines, your habits, your environment, these are the invisible forces shaping your days and eventually your destiny. A good system makes progress feel natural. It lowers resistance and creates momentum. And the more you build around your values, the easier it becomes to live in alignment with them. There will be setbacks, days when you feel off course, moments when the habit slips. That doesn't mean you've failed, it means you're human. What matters is that you return, that you recenter, that you begin again without judgment. Because every time you come back, you reinforce the habit, and more importantly, the belief that you are someone who perseveres. Consistency isn't about perfection, it's about resilience. It's about designing a life that supports your growth and makes your best behaviors easier to repeat. When your systems support your identity, success becomes more than a goal, it becomes a lifestyle. So choose your habits thoughtfully. Build systems that reinforce who you want to be. Stay connected to your why, because the habits you nurture today are shaping your tomorrow. The life you want isn't a distant dream. It's something you build step by step, day by day, one small decision at a time. And it begins right now, with what you choose to do next.